Hi, this is Tom Farley, New York Times bestselling author of The Chris Farley Show, and you're watching Good Company.
Good company!
Hey guys, my name's Scott Bowling, and you're watching Good Company. Today we have the man, Mr. Tom Farley. Tom Farley is the older brother of Chris Farley. He's written a book. We have it right here.
There it
The
is.
Chris Farley Show.
Eh.
He's also has the.
It's in the New York Times bestselling
whoa,
book.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Come on.
it's right there. in
There it
that
is. Yep. That's all I got going for me.
He's also part of this, the I Am Chris Farley
Yeah.
document. You got your own DVD too.
There it is, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Tom, thank you for being here.
Good to see you, Scott. Absolutely. It's fun to be here.
I love this book. If you want to get right into it, it's this came out about 10 years ago or something?
In 08, yeah.
What made you want to release a book?
Good question. Right after Chris died, I was living in New York, and we had a lot of thinking about Chris, and I always thought of like all the stuff that people saw on camera. I mean, he did stuff throughout our whole lives that was 10 times funnier, like, at home or, in school and stuff like that. And we're always talking, Chris Farley stories. Like, remember when Chris did this? Or did you hear what he did last night? And I thought, wow, what a great book that would be. So I started shopping around right after he died. And people were really interested, publishers, but they said, we want to hear the whole story. And at that point, I really wasn't ready to tell the whole story. I was ready to like the funny stories, but all of it, no. So many years went by, but another 10 years went by, and finally, I at that point gone out and I've been talking to kids and run the Chris Farley Foundation. And I got very comfortable with Chris's full story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I was like, now we can write the story. And I shopped around for some publishers, and we did that. And so, it was. So it starts out with all these great stories, and then his struggles, and then of course at the end, we know the ending. But it took me a while to get to that point to write it.
It's great that you have a. Sorry to cut you off. It's great that you have like a source where all your memories are in one spot.
Totally.
So do you ever forget stuff?
We know what's really interesting is. If I wrote a book about my brother from my perspective, it would have been my perspective. But we wrote this, Tanner and I, going out and interviewing people from growing up in Madison, Wisconsin, to Chris's time at Marquette in college, to his early career at Second City in Chicago, then SNL in New York, and then the movies in LA. And so we interviewed all people that were with him at those times. And what we got was not all these like different stories of Chris at different parts of his life. It's all these people were really pretty much telling the same story. I mean, they really got Chris. I mean, because Chris really was, what you saw is what you got. Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of neat. So all these different people that knew him in different contexts, so like they all knew the same guy.
Yeah, he
wasn't a different guy.
Oh, that's a great point.
It was really cool.
Yeah, he's the same person. Yeah, you didn't get some kind of weird story.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the book, I love this how you go from back to when you guys were kids, and the stories you tell are great. And like, isn't there a story about you were on a date or with somebody, and Chris was kind of messing it up for you, and you're like, I just wish you'd go home, Chris, or something like that?
No.
No,
I'm kidding. He was. The thing is, he was always doing that.
Yeah.
Like I had to drive him to school. When I was a senior, he was a sophomore, and so I drove him to school because I had to. My parents made me, and I would pick up this girl in my class who was also a neighbor, and I kind of liked. And she was in the front seat, Chris was in the back, and literally almost every week at some point, I knew it was coming, but it was just I just wasn't prepared every time. There'd just be this loud fart from the back seat. And then Chris would go, "Oh, Susie," and she's like, "That wasn't me." And I'm looking, I'm gonna kill you, man. I'm gonna kill you. Why you would just do that all the time? In the hallways, I'd be talking to some girl, and stumbling. I was just not very good at that sort of thing. And then I'd see him round the corner in the hallway. I'm like, oh no, here it comes.
Yeah.
Every time. he'd wait till he's right there, and I'd like knowing that I was panicking, and he'd get there and he's like, "Hey, Tommy, you went to bed again last night. Mom's really pissed." I'm like, and these girls were looking at me like, what is wrong with you people? And Chris would just laugh.
Yeah.
Put on the hall.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, it wasn't funny.
I love the stories too, like how he got to Second City and SNL. Were you guys pretty close back then when he was doing Second City?
Well, when Chris was doing Second City, I was living in New York. I was still out there. Mm-hmm. So he was a couple years behind me. So but the stories I was hearing were amazing, because I had a lot of friends in Chicago and it's a small world. And so, I was amazed with Chris, because he was just always the knucklehead younger brother.
Right.
I was the one that towed the line. I was the one that studied. I was the one that dressed well. And Chris was just this goofball that was just making more friends than me by being just a knucklehead. And so I just never really kind of gave him much credit. But all of a sudden he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to go down to Chicago to be a comic." And we were like, okay. We thought we'd be home in like 6 months. But all of a sudden he was just really committed to this work. And I was like kind of surprised for the first time in his life and our lives. I saw Chris as he was focused. And it kind of surprised me. I was like, "Oh, that's really weird." And his rise up the ladder was so quick because he was so focused.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm still not focused. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So,
when you wanted to write this book, did any of your other brothers or your sister want to write a book too, or was this something?
No, it was pretty much me. I wanted my brothers involved in it, but they were trying to build their acting careers themselves, and so they and they just didn't want to, they were just doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of my thing. I was, I thought it would just be good, And again, I got some heat because even though I was ready to tell Chris's story, I think some of my brothers weren't ready. My sister still isn't ready to tell that.
That's true.
That side of the story. So. But I was, so I did it, and and it was,
When you get finished writing something like this, do you ever want to go back or wish you'd gone back and say, "Oh, I should have added this, or I should have taken out this," or is there any kind of rewriting?
No, there were. As a matter of fact, that's an interesting story. I let people tell their version of Chris, and I didn't want to rewrite their stories. Mm-hmm. Like for instance. Chris Rock was talking about the Chippendales dancer.
Yes, I love that story.
Yeah. And he's like,
I got it right here. Look
there it is. Yeah,
there he goes.
And the funny thing about Rock's perception was, if this was like making fun of a black character, they would never get me to do that. Mm-hmm. And they're getting Chris to make fun of his weight.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cruel to make him do that.
Yeah.
And okay, I let Chris, and I put that in the book, and that's Chris's, Rock's, kind of view of that thing. But and instead of countering that, I just left it alone. Mm-hmm. But the real story is, man, I was watching that Chippendales thing since we were this big. Mm-hmm. Chris was out, just out making a spectacle of himself. He had a bad body image, kind of thing going, but he also knew that he could make people laugh and diffuse there before people called him fatty, he would call himself, he would get there first and make it funnier.
And didn't he have Tom Farley, or not Tom Farley, Tom Arnold was, didn't he comment on that too? He was like, he said Chris reached out to him, was like, should I do this or not? Yeah. Did he reach out to you guys as well?
No. No, that was because this was all about he was more concerned about his career, not really about how will this make me look.
Yeah.
But as I said, when we were in college, we were camp counselors up in northern Wisconsin, and the band would go on, there'd be bands like, all right, we'll be back in 15 minutes. And they'd take a break, and then we would leave the dance floor, they'd pipe in music, and we'd all get to the bar and turn around. And there'd be Chris all alone on the dance floor with his shirt off, slapping it on the ground, between his legs and doing stuff. And these girls were like, oh, do you know that guy? It's like, yeah, kind of.
He does an excellent worm, too.
He was,
down and I'm like, wow.
He was an amazing athlete.
Can you do that, the worm?
No. I've ate a few. But no, Chris was very agile. You know, it was amazing. He was a good athlete. But yeah, I've been seeing the Chippendales dancer routine since we were kids.
And he did that routine pretty early on in his career. I mean, as far as SNL, right? That was in the first couple of years,
I think,
right?
Yeah, that was the first year. It was Swayze was, I remember, because he had a bunch of friends from Wisconsin out, and we went to Swayze's bar afterwards for the after party.
Oh, that's cool.
Called Mulholland Drive, and so that was maybe the fifth episode.
Yeah.
And it was like the first episode of Chris's SNL. He was like, Conan O'Brien walked him on. It was a Twin Peaks skit. And he walked on. And he had a great line. And he was really good. But then he didn't really have a lot the next couple episodes. And then he did Chippendales Dancer. And everyone went, okay, this is it. Here he is.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. Because and that point, and then he did Tom Arnold impression. And it was just,
I love hearing Mike Myers talk about how he's trying not to laugh when he's doing the Chippendale thing.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of...
Well, because what Chris would do is he would do something completely different in dress rehearsal and then lay something just like wild on him in the live.
So he'd like do cross-side thing. That was so good.
Well, because we grew up watching Carol Burnett. And that was our as the whole family, and there was just nothing funnier than watching these guys who were so funny that they couldn't maintain a straight face. And so Chris wanted to do that on SNL, and Lauren would get so pissed.
Yeah,
he was like, "Stop messing with my product," because at that point, they were professionals,
right?
They didn't crack up, but Chris just made everyone crack up, and now you see it; they're doing it all the time.
Yeah,
breaking character and laughing. But at that point, yeah.
So we got another scene here too. Is Matt Foley?
Matt Foley.
Yes. Can you talk about this? Like Matt Foley is an actual person.
He's a priest.
Priest. Yeah. That sounds
Well, Chris did this character. He and Bob Odenkirk wrote this character at Second City.
Okay.
And Chris used to at Second City was great. Those were the golden years. You'd go in and he'd do these characters that had no name, and he would always like make up, like if he knew you were in the audience, he would use that name. So everyone would be laughing, but there'd be one person laughing just a little bit harder. He always loved to have like one person, like an inside joke. He'd always throw an inside joke because he wanted that. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
Matt Foley went to Marquette with Chris and played rugby with him.
Yep.
And he showed up to and went into the priesthood. Then he came to Chris's show, and Chris knew Matt was out in the audience. So he came out for the first time with this motivational speaker character, and he goes, "I'm Matt Foley." And afterwards, Matt said he came up to him and he goes, "Did you like that character?" And he goes, "Yeah, it was very funny." He goes, "I am never, as long as I do that character, I'm never changing the name."
Wow.
And so, and little did he know that he'd be taking it to SNL. But so Matt, so that's the only time he.
That's really cool that he picked his name and said from now on.
That's it.
Yeah, I love how they're not trying to break character like you were saying earlier. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, and Spade even said, I mean, he would he didn't do the pulling the pants up and pulling and he didn't do that in dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
and he just came out and did it all. And Spade just lost it. Couldn't. That was it.
Lorne Michaels, he must have been really strict on all these, where you cannot laugh. I mean, they're looking very.
Well, he was strict regardless because you know what came before. Think of what the Belushi years and the Chevy Chase and the Bill Murray years.
Yeah.
That was a free for all. So by the time the '90s came along, he was Lorne, and he was making a ton of money. It was a big business, and he was very professional and serious, and he wasn't gonna have any of the baloney.
Did you meet Lorne Michaels? I mean,
I was up there all the time.
Yeah,
I lived in New York, so I mean, I to the point where I'd call Chris, and Chris would call me and "Tommy, you coming to the show this weekend?" And I'm like, "Who's playing?" He's like, "I'm playing." Now you can't come because I was He goes. I go, "No, I meant what band?" It's like, I know what you meant.
I like it when in the book when you talk about the first. It may have been the first time he played. There was a limo picking him up, and he didn't know or something. He said, "Oh, that limo's for me."
It's like, let's get to the after party. I'm like, all right. I'm sure one of these guys are for you. It's like, how do you know? It's like I go to the guy with the clipboard. It's like, which one's Chris's? Oh, you can take that one. It's like, how'd you know? It's like, I've been in New York a little bit longer. That's how we do things out here.
That's awesome. Okay, so Tommy Boy was his first big movie, right? What was that like being?
That was his first starring movie. Yeah.
What was it like being? You weren't in this movie, but
My other two brothers were. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out raising kids in Connecticut and doing my thing. So when this all came about, it was like once he left SNL, I'm like, he was off to the races.
Before this, he did a lot of he was in like Wayne's World and Airheads, and a bunch of little cameos, right?
Coneheads.
Coneheads, yeah.
Yeah, Airheads. Both Wayne's Worlds. Yeah, and there were little parts, but he stuck memorable parts.
Right.
It was just I remember seeing these little parts in these really funny movies, but I'm like, wow, Chris really. And that's kind of what. It's interesting. Like when he was at Marquette, he hated school. He wasn't an academic, and so he wanted to drop out, and he went to this. One of the deans of the communication school he was in, he said, I'm out. And the dean said, well, your parents really want you to get a degree. So you got to find some way to stay here. Why don't you go out for a play? You're kind of animated, understatement. And Chris goes, guys play sports. What are you talking, play? He didn't do any theater up to that point.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so he said, okay, he respected this guy. I'll go out for play. And it was like this little bit part as a cop. And people said, as soon as he stepped on stage, people were just like, what's this guy going to do?
Yeah.
He has that look of something's going to happen. And, he had this presence from the audience. But for Chris's point of view, he was always the goofy kid, in sports. He was like the guy on the football team with the helmet on backwards in practice, pants pulled up to his chin, running around, chasing the freshman football players around in the showers after the game. Come here, little boy. Putting him in therapy for the rest of their life. Yeah, it was horrible. But then when game time came along, he would be there, but he was all of a sudden he's on the stage, and the people on stage with him were like his teammates, and the people in the audience were applauding him, yeah, we like you, you're good, and he was like, this is just like sports. And he came to realize that he wasn't an athlete that was very funny. He was a very gifted comedian that was very athletic. He just had to turn around. And once he did that, man, he was off to the races.
Yeah.
But he had that weird kind of presence that you couldn't take your eyes off.
Yeah, yeah. So the second movie he was in was Black Sheep, and they were basically, you know what? On this one right here, Tommy Boy, when they put this out, this movie kind of tanked, didn't it? At first, it was not tanked, but it was
the number one in the country.
It was number one in the country
that weekend for the weekend. Yeah, nice try.
Oh, it was for the weekend. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was a slow rise.
Yeah, it beat out Tank Girl.
I remember Tank Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lori Petty. Yeah. I think that was it. Yeah, it beat out Tank Girl. Which I did. It was touch and go. I thought, Tank Girl was going to be awesome, but. So Tommy Boy came out and it did. The critics didn't like it.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it tanked in general, but it was
no,
amazing.
the critics did not like it. Roger Ebert hated it, which started a feud between Chris and Roger Ebert, which was fun. Ebert hated it, and but it was number one.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to be called Tommy Boy.
Yeah. Talk about that. So originally it had a different name. Yeah.
Yeah. His original character was Billy Callahan III, and he was going to play Billy III, and it was going to be called Billy III, and but at the same couple months before that, Billy Madison came out, and Lauren said you can't have two Billys, so it was at that time that my son Tommy was born, and I named him Tommy Farley III after my dad and myself, and so Chris goes, all right, I'll be Tommy Callahan III. And right when it came out, I said, "That's great. You named your character after Dad and me and Tommy." He goes, "No, I named after Dad and Tommy." I'm like, okay, I get it. So jerk. Yeah. So he was very specific about that.
So they tried to. They made Black Sheep next, which is kind of similar to Tommy Boy. Wasn't the script of this movie was kind of a little
It was
late.
thrown together at the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a 2-movie deal, and Chris wanted to like go out and make some real movies. He didn't want to do another, slapstick kind of thing, and they didn't have anything ready. But Spade, Chris he was rocketing up, and Spade was like he needed this other movie, so he said, please, you pleaded with Chris to do this movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he said, no, we got to do this. We got to do this. And Chris goes, okay, so we did it, and it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, in Chris's stand, it wasn't bad. It was the same.
Right.
And Chris wanted better. He wanted to do better. But, he had fun doing it, I think,
And he was still on SNL, right, during all this, too?
Just at the end, yeah. That was
just at the end of SNL, okay.
Yeah. He was still working. Tommy Boy, he was going back and forth to California and back to New York. And no, he was up in Toronto for that. This was California. So it was a lot of travel.
How much time off was that from Tommy Boy to Black Sheep? Do you remember? I mean, like...
Less than a year, I think, yeah. Because Tommy Boy came out in 96, 95, 96.
Yeah.
Well, he died in 97, so there wasn't much time
that's huge.
to do
That's a good point.
3 more movies.
This one, Beverly Hills Ninja. I remember when he was doing a lot of late night shows talking about this movie.
Yeah, they did a lot of marketing for that.
It's amazing, too. Like, he'd come on stage doing cartwheels and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, as I said, he was very liberal. He got really into it. I saw, we just did another, we have this, I Am Chris Farley, but A&E just did another documentary.
Really?
It was very similar to this, but, A&E's, it got a lot more play. And they had a lot more time to interview more people than this.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Come on, man.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry.
Google.
Yeah.
Sorry. But we just did that, and the guy that plays his brother, Robin Shue, the actor, he talks about how like he was a serious martial arts, actor. He was in Mortal Kombat, for God's sakes.
Okay.
So they asked him to do this movie, and they said, "You're going to be a brother with Chris," and he was like, "Come on, man, I'm a martial arts guy." I don't want to do some slapstick. But he met Chris, and at that time, Chris had done all this study of martial arts, and he was doing this apprenticeship with this guy named Master Guo, who taught him all these moves. And he was amazed. Robin Shue was amazed that Chris was that committed to the martial arts.
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right, this will be fun. And he said he had a great time doing this movie with Chris, and Chris was really into it.
Yeah.
Do the martial arts, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember him saying a story about those nunchucks he was talking about. So he did all the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this came out in in 97, I think, or 96, right? I mean, that's, like you're saying, it's all back to back.
Yeah, we're probably early 97. Yeah. Because the last one came out after he died. So, yeah, it was 97.
This one right here that Chris did that kind of got away from me, Almost Heroes, is funny. This is awesome.
It was fun. Yeah, I liked it. You know what? It could have been, because who directed it? Christopher Guest.
Okay.
And Christopher Guest has done all these great, The Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman. Yeah. What was the other one? The musical one, I forget it. But he's got all these great ensemble players. He was, and then he directed, and he just kind of, it could have been so much more funny, but it was pretty good.
So Chris Farley and Matthew Perry, did you meet Matthew Perry? I mean, he's coming off the sets of Friends. I mean, it's amazing this movie wasn't huge,
Right. It was that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It should have been, and I think because Chris died right before it came out, they didn't want to feel like they were capitalizing on the notoriety of his death.
Yeah.
So they just kind of stopped all marketing. And that affects a movie greatly. So that has to do with, I shouldn't put it all on Chris Guest's shoulders, but there's a lot that had to do with marketing too.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's true. And at this time, Chris is battling his demons pretty hard around this time.
Yeah.
Did he do that? When he's doing a movie, it's such a commitment. Could he? I mean, was he deep in his addictions around the movie time, or did he
No.
put that
That's a
aside?
good question. This is a great question, and I appreciate that question because, that's why he was so when he was successful in his recovery, the last 3 years on SNL. When he was, the funniest guy out there is when he was clean and sober, but it was also a weekly deal. I mean, he was getting that whatever affirmations he needed, and whatever to build him up. He was getting it every single week. He would show up and he was working hard. He'd work all night, and that helped him in his recovery. When he went to movies, however, he would have 6 months of doing nothing, and that's when he would get into trouble. That's when the old habits and behaviors would come back, and then but when he got to a movie, he was back again doing the daily stuff, and he was working it hard, and so when you saw the movies, he was clean and sober. Mm-hmm. But then the movie would be over, and he'd have downtime.
When he did the downtime, did you guys stay in contact a lot? I mean, between movies and.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear from him a lot?
Yeah, we'd always, Madison's our home base. My parents where we grew up. Parents were still there, so we'd always come home for a Badger football game or a Packer game or
Yeah.
We'd at that point, Chris and I were living in New York when he was at SNL, so we were really close then. And then he went to California, and my other two brothers got into the business, so they were really close during all this time. My other three brothers, I had like 3 kids to raise, and a family, and so I was less so. But he would come, he'd always come and see us, and so it was fun, But our family, that's how we grew up, close like that.
Mm-hmm. Also, not many people know Shrek.
Yeah, the original Shrek was written for Chris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it was he was the guy, and it's it would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, they have some clips on YouTube.
Yeah, and different. It would have been a different Shrek, but I had forgotten all about it. I had, I remember Chris talking about this ogre movie he was doing. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And they died, and I forgot about it. Then it was 4 years later when Shrek came out, and my kids were kind of in that Shrek age group, so we were going to go see it. But I remember when it was just about to come out, you'd go into movie theaters and you'd see these cutouts of coming soon, and I'm like, I wonder if that's that ogre movie that Chris was going to do. And I had totally forgotten about it because
it came out.
It took 4 years because Chris was like 90% done.
Wow!
And they were like, they could have released it with just making some, just some adjustments to somebody's voice, and they could have finished it, but they thought, nah, that doesn't seem, that doesn't seem good. So they asked Mike Myers to do it. Mike Myers did the whole movie.
Maybe.
And they go, yeah, we don't like it. And then somebody goes, what about that Scottish voice you do? Can you do it then? So he did it a third time, and by that time, it takes a long time to do these movies.
That's a great
story. So he finally
story.
did it the third time in his Scottish voice, and they go, that's it. And then that's how Shrek.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody has audio. I mean, there's some clips of Chris Farley doing it on YouTube, but I wonder if they would ever release it, like the full...
My brother Johnny has got like some of the artist renderings of when they were pitching the movie to Chris, and they're like, okay, it's about this ogre, and you know how they see the police renderings? Yeah. They showed Chris, and it's like, here it is. And Johnny's got these renderings of Shrek, but it's Chris's face. I mean, it's Chris. And there's one.
That's so
there's
cool.
One. It's Chris as Shrek on a toilet with like kind of a Playboy, but it's like a female Shrek with like 3 tits, and it's like, and it was like that's how they pitched Chris the movie. It's wild. Yeah.
I wonder, if he would have gone down that route of doing animation, more movies like that. That's interesting.
Well, you know what? there was a downturn in the industry right shortly after Chris, when we had the recession, and animated movies were kind of the realm of kind of B actors. But then when no one was getting work, everyone went to all of a sudden now, A actors were doing animated stuff, and that was huge. That wasn't as big back in the day, but all of a sudden it was big again.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
cool.
he would have,
I love it.
yeah.
I love this. I'm Chris Farley. I love these pictures.
These pictures, I mean,
Yeah, where did these come from? Let's go.
Yeah, everyone thought there are all these photographers. They're a weird group, and they all, but they're looking for their kind of create. Chris was just like, I can work with this guy.
Yeah.
Making Chris Farley into that's talent, man. That that takes a vision. So
Yeah.
it is, and the end result is like, wow. I mean, I've seen some amazing pictures of Chris that you would never think to take.
Mm-hmm.
They're really kind of neat.
Yeah.
That these photographers would take.
Will these ever come out? These
They come out once in a while. My cousin who lives in Jersey, her little son was at day camp with this counselor, and she, oh, your last name is Farley, and it's like my mom was a ballerina in New York, and they did this photo shoot for Rolling Stone with Chris. I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of Chris in the pink tutu.
Yeah,
it was for
Maybe.
Rolling Stone, and they got this
I think I've seen
ballerina.
it, yeah.
They got this ballerina to do it with. You usually just see Chris in this pink tutu, which is funny as it is. But they got this ballerina who is this girl's mother, and they had these pictures on their wall at home of Chris with this ballerina, and it's just like. There was such a contrast, and she's all in her, Swan Lake kind of outfit, and it's just one of those wow.
Yeah, how did you...
Just yeah.
I think be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Just, how did this happen?
I don't know. They're just. He must have been doing a lot of those photo shoots.
Do you keep a lot of stuff, photos and archive of Chris Farley stuff that's going to be released? Or
no, not really. In this movie, or maybe it was probably in that there are bits in there. We have some home movies of growing up.
Yeah.
That we stick in there, but not too many. We had some Super 8s that we. But
how's the rest of your brothers and sisters doing? I know your brother's Kevin's doing stand-up.
Kevin's doing a lot of stand-up, and he did this a movie or two,
Okay.
But he does a lot of stand-up, and he's all over the country doing that. I saw him last night. He was home in Madison, and stand-up really. Chris could never do stand-up.
Oh, okay.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Chris and all my brothers are really good at an ensemble. Improv. I'm not going to come up with a great idea, but if you do, I'm right on it. I'm supporting it, and I get it right away. Split. Chris had this amazing. He could process an idea so quickly.
But he was never a writer, so he just yeah.
He was just but he knew just character. He just knew what you were. Even if you were not really articulating your premise, whatever, Chris would get it and made it funny. Mm-hmm. So improv is really kind of a strong suit in my. I even teach improv, but so for Kevin to go off on a flyer and to do stand up where it's just you making up. It's one of the hardest forms of comedy. I think
How long
brutal.
has he been doing stand up?
Probably now 8 years, maybe.
8 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not that long.
No, not that long.
Do you remember his first one? It must have been.
It was still pretty funny. I mean,
Yeah.
because all we have to do, again, with Chris, is tell family stories, and you're the funniest guy in the room. Because people are like, no, that didn't happen. It's like, yeah, it actually did. I mean, if you ever seen Spade's stand up, at one point when he was, a lot of it were telling Chris stories. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're the funniest guy in the room telling stories about Chris.
Yeah,
it's easy if that's what you do.
I love how all this, you have the book. We have I'm Chris Farley, and then Adam Sandler writes the song about Chris Farley. That's amazing.
That was pretty neat. Yeah, that was really cool, and I love the fact that he called my mom first.
Oh, he
said,
did?
"I'm going to do this," and they were they all bonded because on SNL for 2 years they did a Mother's Day special. So all their mother,
That's cool.
Sandler's mom, my mom, Spade's mom, Kevin Nealon's mom, Rock's mom, Doris Hartman, Phil's mom. They all did this Mother's Day special, and these mothers were just, you could see, oh my God, this does not fall far from the tree. These mothers were amazing. They were so funny, and they all bonded. And my mom still talks to David Spade's mom, Judy Todd,
That's cool.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Nealon, Kathleen Nealon, Doris Hartman while she was alive. They all just send each other Christmas cards, and they were a hysterical group.
Yeah, I loved it. I love seeing it on SNL, and that's just amazing. His legacy still moves on, and I mean, you got stuff like this. I'm Chris Farley. You got your book, and
20 years later, it's weird. 2022, it's weird. Yeah.
it's like a whole new generation can kind of appreciate
Well,
it.
I get it with like little boys. They turn 12, 13. They see Tommy Boy. It's like they're done.
Yeah,
They're
it's perfect.
Hooked. Yeah, it takes little girls a little bit longer. It's like that guy's gross. A couple years later, it's like he's kind of funny.
I do want to ask you though, the Chris Farley Foundation you're a part of, right? What's going on with that?
Well, I did that for like 15 years. I actually kind of tied that up a couple years ago, a little bit after I wrote the book, because I mean I used to go in to schools and well, here's how I started out. I mean, I went into schools because I just wanted to talk about, Chris and his struggles and try and maybe prevent other kids from going down that were fans of Chris's from going down that same road. So I remember I was in Connecticut. I was going into these schools with this woman whose son had died of a heroin overdose. And she would go in there like a month. I'm like, I don't blame her. It was her story, and tears, and don't do this like my son did, and make good choices, and very emotional, very crying. And I'm sitting next to her. I'm like, I'm Irish, man. We bury those emotions as deep as don't ever come out again. So I knew I couldn't do that. Certainly not like a mother could. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I had to find something else. And I looked at all my brothers who were just so good at using their humor to get people's attention. So I said, okay. And their humor was improv. So I learned improv. And I would go into schools, and my thought was, we've given them all this great information. All this great, this is a methamphetamine, and here's a brochure. Learn about it. Here's this, and and this is what it does to your brain. But we didn't give them any tools to use that knowledge.
Yeah.
And I studied improv, and I realized it was a communication tool. It was designed to help kids communicate better. I'm like, well, that's it.
Yeah.
To me, that's let's go out and teach them improv and create and have fun doing it, but also teach them peer enhanced environments, not peer pressured environments.
Oh, okay, I love that.
And it was great. So I would go into schools and teach them improv, and had a lot of fun with it. And of course, schools don't have budgets, so I would walk away with a T-shirt half the time, but I loved it. I learned some amazing stuff, and I think I kind of helped kids out by just teaching them how to communicate better.
Yeah, that's great.
And then when I wrote the book, it became a New York Times bestselling author.
Sorry. Yeah.
So anyway,
there it is. That's right.
now
here.
there it is.
There
Yeah,
it is.
there it is. I stopped going into schools and doing the actual workshops and programs, and I just go in now into. I kind of wrapped up the foundation. I go into schools as an author, as a motivational speaker, actually.
Yeah, down by the river.
And I go in and talk about Chris's story, his successes in recovery. It depends on what it is. If it's kids, I talk about prevention. If it's a community and adults, I talk about your recovery and that sort of thing. And again, I don't know how many lectures you've heard, but most people are just so boring. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Not going there. No PowerPoint. No, I'm just going there, and I just ad lib it and just have fun and talk about Chris's story and answer questions and have people walk away with some amazing things to think about. So It's been fun.
That's awesome, Tom. Wait, I appreciate you being on Good Company. This is great
That's
having
it?
you here. Yes.
right.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. There was this freaky moment on the road coming down here.
Was it? Oh yeah.
With a truck with. I'm just
Yeah, talk about that. That's Black Sheep.
Black sheep. It was kind of ominous though. It was like, and the thing is, Ryan, my driver, was like, "Oh my God, look at that!" I'm like, "What?" I'm so used to it now. But he's like going, "I got Tom Farley in the car and it says Black Sheep." I'm like, "Okay, I get it." Yeah, it's kind of freaky.
He's freaking out.
But it is. I mean, think about it.
He took about 100 pictures.
But and my mom does it more than anyone. But there's these little things that like that Black Sheep moment that it's like, he's up there screwing with me all the time. He's I don't believe in a lot of like supernatural stuff, but I do know for a fact that he is up there doing this shit all the time to me.
He is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Tom, appreciate it, man.
Fun. Yeah.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Awesome. This was good.
Thank you.
Really fun to be here. All right. That's it?